The iron gate shrieked as Alara pushed it open. Midnight fog clung to the cemetery stones, thick enough to taste earth and decay, and something older. She clutched the threadbare bear to her chest, its button eyes reflecting nothing. 23 years old, and still she came. Still she knelt at the marble sepulchre that bore no name, only a date. 1547. 1782. 243 years since someone had loved him enough to carve those numbers. The stone was cold beneath her fingertips. She set the bear against the base, where frost had begun to silver the engraved roses. Her breath misted white. "I brought him back," she whispered. Like always. The cemetery offered no answer. It never did. Yet every dawn, the bear was gone, and every dusk, it reappeared on her windowsill, smelling faintly of candle wax and iron. Tonight, the bear did not wait until morning. It moved. A twitch of threadbare paw. A subtle shift of stitched head. Alara's pulse hammered against her ribs as the corsite toy tumbled sideways and a pale hand emerged from behind the sepulchre. Long fingers. Skin like moonlight on water. "You should not be here, little one." The voice was silk over gravel, edged with something that might have been sorrow. A man stepped into view, tall and unnaturally still, wearing a coat black as the spaces between stars. His hair fell to his shoulders in dark waves, and his eyes were the color of spilled wine. Alara's voice caught. She should run. Every instinct screamed it, but her legs refused. "I didn't mean to disturb you. You've disturbed me for 7 years. He tilted his head, and the gesture was too smooth, too precise. "Not human. Every night. This ritual of yours. 7 years. Since the night her sister died in her arms, blood bright against snow. Since Alara had found this grave by accident, fleeing her grief into the dark. Since she'd begun leaving the bear, her sister's bear, as an offering to someone, anyone, who understood what it meant to be remembered. "I'll stop," she managed. "Will you?" He moved closer, and she realized he cast no shadow. The fog parted around him like a living thing. "Or will you return tomorrow, and the night after, weaving your sorrow into mine until neither of us can distinguish where one ends and the other begins?" His gaze dropped to her throat, to the pulse beating there, wild and visible. "What are you?" Though she already knew. The impossible stillness, the ageless face, the way the darkness seemed to bend around him. "I am the reason this grave remains undisturbed." His lips curved, revealing the barest hint of fangs. "I am Adrian Corvus, and you, little mourner, have been leaving gifts at my resting place since you were barely more than a child yourself." Alara's fingers found the bear. The toy was warm now, impossibly so, as if something had been holding it. "You return it every night. I am not cruel enough to keep what isn't offered freely." Adrian's expression softened just fractionally, just enough. "Though I confess, I've grown curious about the woman who grieves a sister 7 years cold, who speaks to stone as if it might answer." Thunder cracked overhead. The first drops of rain struck marble, iron, earth. "You should go," he said quietly, "before the storm." But Alara didn't move, because in the lightning's flash, she'd seen it, the sepulchre's inscription, half hidden by shadow and time. "Here lies Adrian Corvus, who loved too well and paid eternity's price." "You're supposed to be dead," she breathed. "I am." His smile was all edges now, beautiful and terrible. "I have been, for 243 years, yet still I wake, still I hunger, still I remember what it was to be warm." The rain came harder, cold rivulets down her neck, soaking through wool and cotton. She shivered. Adrian watched her tremble, and something shifted behind his eyes, something almost like pain. "Come." He extended his hand. "Before you catch your death in earnest, I owe you that much, for your companionship. I'm not going anywhere with you." "No?" Lightning again, illuminating the graveyard. Empty, nothing but stones and shadows and the gathering storm. "Then you'll walk home alone, through streets where your kind have been vanishing. 3 this month, all found drained, all bearing marks the authorities cannot explain." Her breath caught. She'd heard the rumors, seen the notices posted in gaslit squares. "That isn't you." "How would you know?" "Because the bear always came back. Because something gentle had held it, night after night, and set it carefully on her sill. Because a monster wouldn't have given her a choice at all." "I just do." Adrian's expression flickered surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. He lowered his hand. Then you're a fool. But there was no cruelty in it, only resignation. And I cannot, in good conscience, leave a fool to die in my cemetery. He turned, coat swirling, and began walking toward the tree line where the graves gave way to wilderness. After 3 steps, he paused. Are you coming, Alara? She froze. How do you know my name? You've whispered it here 100 times. In prayers and pleas and memories I had no right to hear. He glanced back. Your secrets are safe with me. Whether you are safe with me remains to be seen. The rain became a downpour. The gate shrieked again, blown shut by wind. Alara looked at the locked iron, at the empty path behind her, at the vampire lord who had returned her sister's bear for 7 years without asking anything in return. She picked up the toy, pressed it to her heart, and stepped into the dark after him. The forest swallowed them whole. No path marked Adrian's passage, yet he moved with absolute certainty, boots silent on the carpet of pine needles and decay. Alara stumbled behind, rain-blind and shaking, the bear tucked inside her cloak. Lightning split the canopy overhead, throwing writhing shadows that seemed to reach for her. How much farther? Her voice barely carried over the storm. We're here. She looked up and stopped breathing. The manor rose from the earth like a sleeping giant. Gothic spires pierced the low-hanging clouds, their peaks lost to mist and rain. Gargoyles leered from corners, mouths open in eternal screams. Every window was dark save one, a single flame flickering in a tower room, distant as a fallen star. Welcome, Adrian said softly, to Thornfield House. The name tasted of ash and old roses. Alara's fingers tightened on the bear. No one lives here. They say it's been abandoned for centuries. They say correctly. He mounted the stone steps to the massive oak door, carved with serpents and thorns intertwined. But lived in and occupied are not synonyms. The door opened without his touching it. Inside, candlelight bloomed, dozens of flames igniting simultaneously in the grand entrance hall. Alara's breath misted as she crossed the threshold, and the sudden warmth was dizzying. Marble floors gleamed beneath her muddy boots. A staircase spiraled upward into shadow, its banister polished to mirror brightness. Everything was pristine, not a cobweb, not a speck of dust. You clean? The absurdity of the question struck her immediately. Adrian's mouth quirked. I have time. 2 centuries provides ample opportunity to perfect housekeeping. He shrugged off his coat, revealing a shirt of dark silk that fit like a second skin. In the candlelight, his features were knife-edge, sharp, elegant, and inhuman. Beautiful in the way a winter storm was beautiful. Awe and danger inseparable. You're staring, he observed. Heat flooded her cheeks. I'm trying to understand. Understand what? How something dead can look so alive. The words hung between them, stark and unintended. Adrian went very still. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to barely more than a whisper. Appearances deceive. I assure you, little mourner, there is nothing of life. Here. He gestured toward a corridor branching left. The guest chambers are that way. Take whichever room suits you. You'll find dry clothes in the wardrobes. They should fit well enough. Whose clothes? Mine. From before. He turned away toward the ascending staircase. The storm will break by dawn. You may leave then, if you wish. And if I don't wish? His hand tightened on the banister. Wood groaned beneath his grip. Then you're a greater fool than I thought. He was gone before she could respond, melting into shadow with inhuman speed. The candles flickered in his wake, flames bending as if pulled by an invisible tide. Alara stood alone in the entrance hall, dripping rainwater onto immaculate marble, clutching a teddy bear that had led her into a vampire's lair. What am I doing? But she knew. The same thing she'd been doing for 7 years, seeking something in the dark that daylight couldn't provide. Understanding, perhaps, or simply the comfort of not being alone. In her grief, she moved down the indicated corridor. Doors lined both walls, each identical. She chose one at random and pushed it open. The room was smaller than she'd expected. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, its curtains deep crimson. A fireplace crackled with fresh flames impossibly, since no one had lit it. The wardrobe stood open, revealing shirts and breeches in dark fabrics, all precisely folded. On the dresser sat a silver mirror. Alara approached slowly, setting the bear on the bed. Her reflection gazed back. Pale face, dark hair plastered to her skull, gray eyes too large for her hollow features. She looked half drowned, half alive. Nothing of life here, Adrian had said. Yet someone had lit this fire. Someone had opened this wardrobe. Someone had been waiting for her to arrive. She changed quickly, peeling off soaked layers and pulling on a shirt that smelled of cedar and something else, something faintly metallic that made her pulse quicken. The fabric was soft, against her skin, far finer than anything she'd owned. She left her wet clothes by the fire and returned to the mirror. In borrowed clothing, she looked like someone else. Someone who belonged in Gothic halls and candlelit chambers. Someone who might choose to stay. A knock startled her 3 soft raps against wood. "Come in," she called, though every instinct screamed otherwise. The door opened. Adrian stood in the threshold, carrying a tray. Steam rose from a porcelain cup, and the scent of herbs filled the air, chamomile and honey. "You'll catch your death otherwise," he said, echoing his earlier words. "Vampires may not sleep, but mortals require certain maintenance." He set the tray on a small table, moving with that unnatural grace. When he straightened, his gaze found hers in the mirror and held. "You look," he trailed off, jaw tightening. "Different? Haunted." He said it gently, as if the word might break her. "As if you've worn grief so long you've forgotten what your face looks like without it." The observation cut deeper than any blade. Alara turned from the mirror, from her own hollow-eyed reflection, and found him watching her with something that resembled recognition. "How did you die?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Adrian's expression shuddered. "Why does it matter?" "Because you keep yours like a shrine. You tend my sister's bear as if it were sacred. Because—" She took a breath. "Because I think you understand." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the fire's crackling. Then Adrian moved to the window, pulling aside heavy curtains. Rain lashed the glass, turning the world beyond into liquid darkness. "I was murdered," he said quietly, "by someone I trusted, someone I loved." His fingers traced the window pane, leaving no print. "She believed eternity a gift. I learned it was a cage. She turned you, and bound me to this place, to these walls, to the grave you've been visiting." His reflection in the grassed, rain-dark glass was barely visible. "I cannot leave Thornfield's grounds. I cannot die. I can only persist." Alara's throat tightened. 7 years she'd mourned her sister. He'd mourned for 2 centuries. "The bear," she whispered. "You returned it because I remembered what it meant to have something to hold on to, even something small." He turned back to her, and his eyes were ancient and weary and desperately, terribly sad. "You should drink your tea before it cools, and sleep, if you can." He moved toward the door. "Adrian." He stopped. "Thank you. For the shelter, for the—" She gestured helplessly. "For everything." His hand rested on the doorframe, white-knuckled. "Don't thank me yet, Alara. The night has only begun, and there are things in these woods far worse than lonely ghosts." The door closed behind him with a soft click. Alara sank onto the bed, the bear in her lap, and realized her hands were shaking, not from cold, from the weight of his gaze, the bare nearness of him, the terrible intimacy of shared sorrow. Outside, something howled low and hungry and close. The candles flickered, and Alara understood that Adrian's warning had not been metaphor. Sleep refused to come. Alara lay rigid beneath crimson sheets, staring at the canopy overhead. The fire had burned low, casting dancing shadows that writhed like living things. Every creak of old wood, every whisper of wind against stone, sent her pulse racing. The howling had stopped an hour ago. Silence pressed against the windows now, thick and watchful. She should leave. At first light, she should walk out those doors and never return. Resume her small, gray life in the village, teaching children their letters, buying bread from the corner bakery, pretending that emptiness was the same as safety. Instead, she found herself rising, pulling on the borrowed coat she'd seen hanging by the fire, slipping barefoot into the corridor with only a candle for company. The manor breathed around her, not the settling of old timber, but something more deliberate, an inhale and exhale that matched the rhythm of her own lungs. Portraits lined the walls, pale faces in antique dress, all bearing Adrian's sharp features. His ancestors, perhaps, or himself, painted across centuries. I cannot leave Thornfield's grounds. A prison built of moonlight and memory. She found the library by accident, drawn by the scent of leather and aged paper. Floor-to-ceiling shelves stretched into shadow, filled with volumes in a dozen languages. A desk occupied the room's center, its surface covered in maps and journals, and her candle illuminated the open page. A sketch, rendered in meticulous detail, a woman's profile, dark hair, delicate features, a smile like sunlight breaking through clouds. Her name was Isabeau. Elara spun. Adrian stood in the doorway, still as carved marble. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not. He moved into the room, each step measured and careful, as if he feared she might bolt. The library is open to all, even uninvited guests. Is that what I am? Uninvited? I stopped knowing what to call you 7 years ago. He reached past her, turning the journal to a new page. More sketches. The same woman laughing, dancing, sleeping, each line drawn with obsessive care. She was my maker, my lover, my destroyer. The possessives held equal weight, devotion and bitterness intertwined. She's beautiful, Elara said carefully. She was everything. Adrian's jaw tightened. Until she wasn't. Until I realized that love, for her, meant ownership. That eternity was the chain by which she meant to keep me. What happened to her? She grew bored. 3 decades of my company proved insufficient entertainment. His fingers traced the sketch, gentle despite the anger threading his words. She walked into sunlight one morning, left me here, immortal and imprisoned, with nothing but her journals and her curse. Elara's throat closed. To be loved so fiercely, and then abandoned, it was a different kind of death. Slower, more complete. I'm sorry. Don't be. He closed the journal with finality. It taught me what I needed to know about the nature of desire, about the danger of wanting anything too much. The words landed like a warning. Elara took a step back, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how his gaze had dropped to her pulse again, the way a starving man might look at bread. Are you hungry? Are you hungry? The question emerged smaller than she'd intended. Adrian's laugh was hollow. Always. But I hunt in the forest. Deer and foxes provide enough to sustain me. I don't feed from humans. Not anymore. Not anymore? I did. Once. In the beginning when hunger was madness and Isabeau encouraged it. Shame flickered across his features. I remember every face, every heartbeat that stopped because I couldn't control myself. It's part of the curse. Vampires forget nothing. We carry our sins with perfect clarity. He turned away, shoulders rigid beneath dark silk. You should return to your room. Lock the door. Don't come looking for me again, Elara. I am trying very hard to be better than what I was made to be. But you. He didn't finish. But I what? You smell like life. The confession emerged rough, almost pained. Like warmth and sunlight and everything I've been denied. Standing this close to you is... The howl shattered the moment. Closer this time. Just beyond the windows. A chorus of snarls and slavering hunger that raised every hair on Elara's arms. Adrian moved before she could blink across the library in a blur, tearing back the curtains. Moonlight flooded through, illuminating what waited in the gardens below. Wolves. Dozens of them. But wrong, too large, too intelligent. Their eyes reflecting red in the darkness. Fenris. Adrian's voice had gone flat. Empty. She sent Fenris. Who? Morrigan Blackthorn. Another of Isabeau's progeny. He spun, catching Elara's wrist with inhuman speed. His skin was ice cold. She wants Thornfield. Wants the power Isabeau left buried here. I've kept her at bay for 3 decades. But now I've given her leverage. Understanding crashed through Elara like a wave. I'm the weakness. The mortal. Yes. No softening, no false comfort. Just brutal honesty. She'll use you to draw me out, to force my hand. And I... His grip tightened fractionally. I cannot let her take you. The windows exploded inward. Glass rained like frozen stars. A wolf massive, gray-furred, foam dripping from its jaws landed in the library's center. It fixed red eyes on Elara and smiled. Then it began to change. Bones cracked and reformed. Fur receded. The creature rose onto 2 legs, its body elongating into something that resembled a woman but moved with predatory wrongness. Pale skin, black hair, a dress like spider silk. Adrian. The woman's voice was honey over poison. Still playing house with mortals? I thought Isabeau cured you of that particular weakness. Leave, Morrigan. And miss the entertainment? Never. She prowled closer, circling, and Elara realized there were more shapes in the shattered window. Wolves becoming women, women becoming smoke. I've been patient, watched you moon over your little mourner for years. But my patience has limits. She's under my protection. How charming. And what will you pay to keep her? Morrigan's smile widened, revealing fangs. Thornfield? The lore Isabeau left? Or perhaps... Her gaze slid to Alara. A trade. Her blood for your freedom. No trade. Adrian stepped between them, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. No negotiation. You leave now, or I remind you why Isabeau chose me over you. Power crackled in the air, ancient and vast and barely leashed. Morrigan's smile faltered. One mortal isn't worth this fight, Adrian. That, he said softly, is where you're wrong. They stared at each other across a gulf of decades and blood. Then Morrigan laughed sharp and brittle. Very well. Keep your pet. For now. She backed toward the window, her form already blurring. But winter's coming, darling. And mortals are so fragile in the cold. She leapt woman, becoming wolf midair, and vanished into the night. The pack followed, their howls fading into forest depths. Silence crashed back, broken only by Alara's ragged breathing. Are you hurt? Adrian's hands were on her shoulders, turning her, checking for wounds with clinical precision. His touch burned cold through the borrowed shirt. I'm fine. Her voice broke. Why? Why protect me? He stilled. His hands dropped away, but he didn't step back. They stood inches apart, and Alara could see the war being fought behind his eyes, hunger and restraint, and something fiercer than either. Because, he finally whispered, for 7 years, you've been the only light in my darkness, the only voice that didn't echo with ghosts. And I will be damned twice over before I let Morrigan extinguish that. The confession hung between them, naked and raw. Alara's hand rose, trembling, to rest against his chest. No heartbeat, no warmth, just the terrible stillness of something that should not exist. Teach me, she heard herself say. Teach me how to fight, how to defend myself. I won't be a weakness you have to protect. Adrian's eyes widened. Alara, please. He searched her face, looking for doubt, finding only determination, and beneath it, the same desperate loneliness that had driven her to his grave night after night for 7 years. This will change you, he warned. Knowing how to kill monsters means understanding them, becoming like them, in small ways. Then I'll change. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, the first true one she'd seen. Dawn is 3 hours away. We start now. He held out his hand. And Alara, who had spent 7 years leaving flowers for the dead, took the hand of death itself and held on tight. The training room lay beneath the manor, accessed through a hidden passage behind the library's far bookcase. Stone walls wept with moisture. Iron sconces held flames that never wavered, never consumed their candles. The air tasted of earth and rust and something sharper, old blood, perhaps, or older magic. Adrian moved through the space with fluid purpose, selecting weapons from a rack that gleamed despite centuries of disuse. A silver dagger. A wooden stake, its point dark with stains. A length of chain that sang with each link's movement. First lesson, he said, turning to face her. Understand your enemy. He set the weapons on a scarred wooden table and rolled back his sleeve. His forearm was a map of scars, white lines crossing, pale flesh, some thin as thread, others thick as rope. Silver burns us. Doesn't kill, but weakens. He traced one particularly savage scar. This was Morrigan, 40 years ago. She wanted the journal you saw. I refused. Alara's fingers hovered over the mark. May I? He nodded, a muscle, ticking in his jaw. She touched the scar. It was cold, like touching marble, but beneath she felt something stirring, a faint pulse. Not a heartbeat, but the echo of one, as if his body remembered what it should be doing and mourned the inability. Wood through the heart ends us, Adrian continued, voice controlled. But it must be precise. An inch left or right merely hurts. Beheading works, though it's messier than novels suggest. His mouth quirked without humor. Sunlight is the surest method. We burn slow at first, then catastrophically. There's no recovery, no healing, just ash and silence. And holy symbols? Running water? Superstition. We're damned, not mythological. He pulled his sleeve down. What kills us is intention. Silver forged with purpose, wood carved with prayers, sunlight that exposes us for what we are, dead things pretending at life. The clinical recitation belied the weight behind each word. He wasn't just teaching her to fight. He was handing her the tools to destroy him, if she chose. "Why tell me this?" Alara asked softly. "Because you need to know. And because—" He picked up the silver dagger, turning it in long fingers. "Because if it comes to a choice between your life and mine, I want you armed with more than hope." He offered the blade. She took it. The hilt was warm, surprising, given everything else in this room was ice cold. Inscriptions ran along the fuller, words in a language she didn't recognize. "It says Mercy's Tooth," Adrian translated. "Forged by monks 3 centuries ago. I took it from the hunter who tried to end me. He died badly." A pause. "I am not proud of that." Alara tested the weight. Too heavy for her grip, but she could adjust. "Learn. Show me how to use it." "Are you certain?" She met his ancient eyes. "If I'm going to survive in your world, I need to be more than a liability." Something shifted in his expression: approval, perhaps, or reluctant respect. He moved behind her, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his body. His hands covered hers on the dagger's hilt, repositioning her grip. "Like this." Fingers wrapped, thumb braced. "You're stronger than you think, but vampires are stronger still. Don't fight force with force." His breath unnecessary, performative, stirred her hair. "Fight with precision. We heal from almost everything, but silver disrupts that. Aim for major vessels, throat, femoral, heart if you can manage it." He guided her through the motion, a thrust, a slash, a defensive parry. His body moved against hers, teaching through contact, and Alara's pulse hammered traitor quick. This close, she could see the faint veins beneath his skin, dark as ink, could smell cedar and smoke and that metallic undertone she'd noticed on the borrowed shirt. "Your heartbeat," Adrian murmured, "is very loud." Heat flooded her face. "I can't help it." "I know." His hands tightened fractionally on hers. "Which is why this is dangerous. For both of Nutplater, us." "You said you don't feed from humans." "I don't. But you're—" He stepped back abruptly, releasing her. Distance settled between them like a physical barrier. Again. The sequence. "Without my guidance." She obeyed, moving through thrust/parry. Her form was clumsy, untrained, but determination steadied her grip. Again and again, until sweat dampened her borrowed shirt and her muscles screamed. Adrian watched with unnatural stillness, correcting only when necessary. The silence stretched, filled only by her breathing and the scrape of boots on stone. "Enough," he finally said. "You'll injure yourself." Alara lowered the dagger, chest heaving. "How do you stand it?" The quiet. 200 years of nothing but your own thoughts. "I read. I sketch. He gestured vaguely at the training room. "I prepare for battles that may never come. And I listen." "To what?" "The house. The forest. The rain." His gaze found hers. "Your voice, these past 7 years. The way you speak to your sister as if distance means nothing. As if love can outlast death." The confession laid him bare, loneliness so profound it had shaped his entire existence. "It can," Alara said. "Outlast death. My sister is gone, but she's still here." She pressed a hand to her heart. "Every memory, every lesson she taught me, she's woven into everything I am. Then you're fortunate." Adrian's voice dropped to barely more than a whisper. "All I have are Isabeau's journals. Instructions on how to be what she wanted, powerful, cold, empty. But I couldn't. Can't. I still feel everything she tried to burn out of me." He turned away, shoulders rigid. "That's not a weakness," Alara said. "That's what makes you different from her, from Morrigan. Different doesn't mean safe." "I'm not looking for safe." The words emerged before she could stop them, reckless and true. Adrian's head turned, sharp and sudden, eyes luminous in the sconce light. "What are you looking for?" "You," the answer rose. Unbidden. This. But she couldn't say it. Couldn't acknowledge that somewhere between the graveyard and the dagger lesson, her grief had begun transmuting into something far more dangerous. "Understanding," she said instead. "Purpose. A reason to stop visiting graves. And you think I can provide that?" "I think." She set down the dagger, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I think we're both searching for the same thing. Someone who sees us, not what we've lost, or what we're afraid of becoming. Just us. The distance between them felt suddenly vast and impossibly fragile. Adrian crossed it in 3 strides. His hand rose, hesitated, then cupped her face with infinite care, thumb brushing the arch of her cheekbone. Ice cold, gentle. I see you, Alara. The admission cost him. She could see it in the tension bracketing his mouth, the way his other hand clenched at his side. I have seen you for 7 years, and it terrifies me. Why? Because every time you leave something, at my grave, every time you whisper your sister's name, I want to answer. Want to reach through stone and time and this God's damned curse and tell you. He stopped. Swallowed. Tell you that you're not alone. Her hand covered his where it rested against her face. Mortal warmth meeting immortal cold. You just did. The moment stretched. Held. Broke. Above them, something crashed. The sound of splintering wood. Snarls that shook dust from stone. Adrian's expression shuddered instantly. They're inside. He was already moving, inhuman speed propelling him toward the stairs. Alara grabbed the silver dagger and followed, heart slamming against ribs. The wolves had returned, and this time, Morrigan wasn't playing games. The entrance hall was chaos. 3 wolves, massive, red-eyed, foam-muzzled, circled a figure in black. Adrian, moving too fast to track, redirecting snapping jaws with brutal efficiency. Blood painted the marble in arcing streaks. One wolf lay motionless, its throat torn open. Another limped, favoring a shattered foreleg. But more were coming. Alara heard them claws on stone, howls echoing through corridors. A hunting pack, coordinated and merciless. The iron room! Adrian's shout cut through the cacophony. Behind the kitchen, go! He caught a wolf mid-lunge and threw it. The creature hit the far wall with bone-cracking force and lay still. Alara ran. Through the corridor, past portraits whose painted eyes seemed to follow her flight. The kitchen materialized ancient wood stove, copper pots, a butcher's block stained dark. She spotted the door Adrian meant. Iron-banded oak, thick enough to withstand siege. Behind her, snarls crescendoed. She spun. A wolf filled the kitchen doorway, smaller than the others, lean and quick. Its lips peeled back, revealing teeth like daggers. It crouched, muscles bunching for the killing strike. Silver for major vessels. Alara's hand tightened on the dagger. No time for fear. No time for anything but the desperate clarity of survival. The wolf leapt. She dropped and rolled pure instinct and felt wind as jaws snapped where her throat had been. She came up slashing, blind and wild, and felt resistance. The blade bit deep into fur and muscle. The wolf shrieked. Not an animal sound. Nearly human in its agony. It stumbled, silver poisoned, thrashing against the spreading numbness. Alara scrambled backward, hitting the iron door. Fumbling for the handle, Adrian appeared. One moment empty air, the next he was there, catching the wounded wolf by the scruff. His free hand closed around its skull. Twist, crack, silence. The wolf's body slumped, shifting mid-fall. By the time it hit the floor, it was a woman young, barely 20, her face frozen in death's surprise. The silver dagger protruded from her chest, inches from her heart. Oh, gods! Alara's legs buckled. I killed her. You defended yourself. Adrian kicked the body aside with cold pragmatism. She chose this. They all did. He grabbed Alara's arm, hauling her upright. Can you walk? She nodded, though her vision swam. Good. Inside. Now. The iron room was smaller than the training chamber. Barely 10 feet square, walls lined with silver and rowan wood. Protective symbols scarred every surface. Crosses, pentagrams, words in dead languages. A sanctuary built to keep darkness out. Or in. Adrian slammed the door, threw the bolt, sagged against the iron with something almost like relief. That won't hold them forever, he said, but it'll buy time. Outside, the wolves hurled themselves against the barrier. Iron groaned but held. For now. Alara sank onto the floor, knees drawn up, the bloody dagger across her lap. Her hands shook violently. Shock, she realized distantly. She was going into shock. Look at me. Adrian crouched before her, hands cupping her face. Alara, look at me. She met his eyes, wine-dark and ancient and unexpectedly gentle. You did what you had to do, he said firmly. She would have killed you without hesitation. Without mercy. You survived. That's all that matters. I'm not like you. I can't just— Her breath hitched. She was a person. Under the wolf, she was just a girl. She stopped being a person when Morrigan turned her, when she chose to hunt for pleasure rather than need. His thumb traced her cheekbone, wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. This is what my world is, Alara. Violence and hunger and choices that destroy you either way. If you can't accept that, if you want to leave— No. The word emerged fierce. Certain. I'm not leaving. Not now. Why not? Because leaving meant returning to half-life. Meant teaching children their letters while her own story remained unwritten. Meant safe, gray days that stretched into safe, gray years until she died having never truly lived. Because the monster holding her face with impossible tenderness saw her more clearly than anyone with a pulse ever had. Because, she whispered, I'd rather face wolves with you than face emptiness alone. Adrian's expression cracked just for a moment, revealing something raw and desperate beneath the controlled exterior. His forehead dropped to rest against hers, cold skin meeting warm, and they breathed together in the flickering candlelight. You're going to destroy me, he said softly. I thought you were already destroyed. I thought so too. His hand slid to the back of her neck, cradling her skull. But you've been putting me back together, piece by piece, every night for 7 years, and I don't know if I can survive losing you now. The confession hung between them, vulnerable and terrified and achingly honest. Alara's hand rose to cover his where it rested against her neck. Then don't lose me. Teach me to fight. Teach me to survive in the dark. Make me strong enough to stand beside you instead of behind you. It will hurt. Training, transformation. Every lesson I have to offer comes with blood and scars. Then I'll bleed. She held his gaze. I've been bleeding for 7 years anyway. At least this way it means something. Outside, the wolves' assault intensified. Wood splintered. Iron groaned. Adrian pulled back, jaw set with renewed determination. We can't stay here. The wards will fail within the hour. We need to reach the tower Isabeau's sanctum. It's the one place Morrigan can't breach without invitation. Why didn't we go there first? Because it requires blood to open. Mine and— he hesitated. And a mortal's. Willingly given. Understanding dawned. You need me to invite you in. Need. Hate. Choose your verb. His mouth twisted. Isabeau designed it as the ultimate cage. I can't access my own power without human cooperation. And humans, historically, don't cooperate with vampires. I'm not most humans. No. The word held weight. Admiration. Fear. You're extraordinary, which is precisely why I should send you away. But you won't. No. A ghost of a smile. I'm too selfish, too desperate, too— His hand found hers, lacing their fingers together, cold and warm, dead and living, intertwined. Too in love with the way you look at me, as if I'm something more than teeth and hunger. The admission hung naked between them. Before Alara could respond, the door buckled. A wolf's head thrust through the gap, slavering, red-eyed, fixed on her with single-minded hunger. Adrian moved, grabbed the dagger from her lap, drove it through the wolf's eye socket in one fluid motion. The creature's death scream shook the walls. Now, Adrian growled. He tore open the door into chaos. 4 wolves in the corridor, more behind. No path to the stairs, no route to the tower. Adrian's body changed. Not fully, not into mist or wolf, but more. Taller, sharper. His eyes blazed crimson, and his teeth elongated, fangs catching candlelight. Stay close, he commanded. Then he lunged into the pack, and Alara understood what predator truly meant. He was beautiful, terrible. A symphony of violence conducted with perfect precision. Bones broke beneath his hands. Blood sprayed in arterial arcs. The wolves tried to overwhelm through numbers, but numbers meant nothing against centuries of rage finally unleashed. Within moments, the corridor was a slaughterhouse. Adrian stood amid the carnage, chest heaving despite not needing breath, covered in blood that wasn't his. When he turned to her, Alara saw the monster Isabeau had tried to create, and beneath it, the man fighting desperately not to become that thing. I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't apologize for surviving. She stepped over bodies, closed the distance between them, and took his blood-stained hand. Let's go. Together, they ran through Thornfield's Gothic halls, leaving death in their wake. Up the spiraling stairs toward the tower room where a single candle had burned since the night began. toward the sanctum that would either save them or trap them forever. The tower door was black oak reinforced with silver sigils that seemed to writhe in the candlelight. No handle, no keyhole, just a shallow indentation at chest height, perfectly shaped for a human palm. And beside it, carved into the wood in elegant script, blood calls to blood. Enter freely and of your own will. Place your hand there, Adrian instructed, his voice rough from exertion. Blood not his own matted his dark hair and stained his shirt. He looked like something from a nightmare. And speak the words. Say you invite me into this space. Alara's hand hovered over the indentation. What happens after? To me, I mean. If I invite you in. Nothing immediately. But it binds us symbolically, magically. Morrigan will know. Every vampire within 100 miles will know that you've allied yourself with me. His jaw tightened. There's no going back from this. Your life will never be simple again. Below, the wolves' howls echoed through the stairwell. Closer, hunting. My life stopped being simple the night my sister died. Alara pressed her palm to the indentation. The silver symbols flared, and pain lanced through her white-hot and immediate. A thorn, somehow embedded in the wood, pierced her skin. Blood welled, dark and immediate, filling the carved hollow. Adrian Corvus, she said clearly, I invite you into this space. Enter freely and of your own will. The door swung open, soundless, inevitable. The sanctum beyond stole her breath. It was vast, impossibly so, given the tower's exterior dimensions. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow. Bookshelves stretched 3 stories high, filled with tomes bound in leather and stranger materials. A 4-poster bed dominated one corner, its curtains midnight blue embroidered with silver stars. Candles floated freely through the air, drifting like luminous jellyfish, casting pools of warm light, and everywhere roses, growing from cracks in the stone, climbing the bookshelves, carpeting the floor in blood-red petals. Their scent was overwhelming, sweet and slightly rotten, beauty laced with decay. Isabeau loved roses, Adrian said quietly, stepping across the threshold. The moment he entered, the door slammed shut behind them. Locks clicked into place 12, 100, mechanisms unseen and unbreakable. She cultivated them even after death. They feed on the house's magic, on what's left of her. Alara moved deeper into the sanctum, drawn by morbid fascination. A writing desk held journals identical to the ones she'd seen in the library, but these were older, their pages yellowed with age. She opened one at random. Day 847 since my transformation. Adrian still resists the gift I've given him. He mourns his mortality as if it were something precious, rather than the cage it was. I must teach him, make him understand. Power is the only truth that matters. The handwriting was elegant, precise, utterly devoid of empathy. She documented everything, Adrian said from behind her. 300 years of her existence, all the people she killed, the vampires she created, her plans for building a dynasty, and you were to be her prince? Her pet. The word emerged bitter. Her possession, something beautiful to keep on a shelf and parade before rivals. When I proved too human, too feeling, she discarded me. He moved to the bed, trailing fingers across dark silk. Left me here to rot in luxury. Alone, with nothing but her words to keep me company. Alara's heart ached for him. For the young man 25, she guessed from the portraits who had been stolen from life and remade into something he'd never wanted to be. Why didn't you destroy them? The journals. Because they're proof of what she was, what I refused to become. Adrian sank onto the bed's edge, head in his hands. And because some part of me still remembers, before the curse, when I thought her divine, when I believed love meant forever. Love can mean forever, Alara said softly, approaching. But it shouldn't mean captivity. Wise beyond your years. He looked up at her through dark lashes. In the candlelight, his face was medieval saint, beautiful suffering rendered in marble. How old are you, little mourner? 23. And you? I was 25 when I died. 268 now. A hollow laugh. Old enough to know better. Young enough to keep making the same mistakes. Alara sat beside him on the bed. The mattress gave beneath her weight, ancient feathers sighing. This close, she could see the fine scars on his throat, 2 puncture marks, long healed but never quite fading. Is that where she bit you? His hand rose unconsciously to touch the marks. Yes. She said it would feel like falling into heaven. It felt like drowning. I'm sorry. Don't be. His hand dropped, fell to rest on the silk between them. If she hadn't turned me, I would have died 243 years ago. Forgotten, unmourned. At least this way, I've had time. Time to read every book in this library. Time to master skills no mortal could achieve. Time to meet a woman who leaves gifts at graves and speaks to the dead as if distance means nothing. His fingers found hers, laced, held. Time, he finished quietly, to fall in love despite every instinct screaming that I shouldn't. That can't. That loving a mortal is the ultimate cruelty. Ilara's breath caught. Adrian. I know. He turned to face her fully, and his eyes were infinite. I know it's selfish, dangerous, that your life is a candle and mine is forever. But I can't help it, Ilara. You've been my light for 7 years. You've put flowers on my grave and spoken my name, a name no one else remembers, and made me feel like something more than Isabeau's failed experiment. His free hand rose to cup her face, thumb tracing her lower lip. Tell me to stop, he whispered. Tell me this is madness. Tell me you want to leave, and I'll find a way. I'll break Morrigan's siege, and send you home, and never bother you again. Just say the word. Ilara's pulse thundered in her ears. Every rational thought screamed that this was insane, that vampires and mortals didn't have happy endings, that love with an expiration date was tragedy waiting to happen. But she'd been living tragedy for 7 years already, and at least this version came with heat and hunger and the most beautiful monster she'd ever seen, looking at her like she was worth more than eternity. Don't stop, she breathed. Adrian's eyes flared crimson. Are you certain? I've never been more certain of anything. He moved slowly, giving her time to change her mind, to flee, to choose survival over this reckless leap. His lips brushed hers once, twice, testing, questioning. Then Ilara's hand fisted in his hair and she pulled him closer, answering with action instead of words. The kiss was cold fire. His mouth moved against hers with controlled desperation. Centuries of loneliness concentrated into the blade, careful slide of lips and the sharp edge of fangs. He tasted like smoke and iron and something wild, the flavor of a storm barely leashed. His hands found her waist, drew her closer, until she was half in his lap and his chest pressed against hers, cold through layers of cloth. She could feel the places where his body forgot to mimic life. No heartbeat, no breath, no warmth, and somehow that made it more intimate, more real. Because he was choosing this, choosing her, despite being dead for 2 centuries. Despite every reason to remain locked behind walls of ice and isolation. When they finally broke apart, both were shaking. I shouldn't want this, Adrian said raggedly, forehead resting against hers. I've spent 200 years learning control, building walls, telling myself that desire was the trap Isabeau used to destroy me. Then don't want it. Ilara's hands framed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Choose it, consciously. Because this isn't Isabeau deciding for you. This is your decision, your desire, your freedom. Something broke in his expression, relief so profound it looked like pain. Freedom, he echoed. I'd forgotten what that word meant. He kissed her again, deeper this time, hands tangling in her hair, and Ilara let herself fall into cold and dark, and the terrifying beauty of loving something that shouldn't exist. Outside the sanctum, wolves howled. Inside, 2 lost souls found each other in the candlelight, and for the first time in 7 years, neither felt alone. They didn't speak for a long time. Adrian held her, simply held her, as if physical contact might prove she was real and not some fever dream conjured by centuries of isolation. His arms were bands of cold around her waist, his face buried in her hair, breathing in her scent though he didn't need to breathe at all. Ilara's fingers traced the scars on his hands, each one a story he'd never told. She counted 17. 17 moments when he'd been wounded badly, enough to leave permanent marks, despite a vampire's healing. This one? She asked softly, touching a jagged line across his palm. 1823. A hunter named Marcus Vane. He had an enchanted blade, something old, something Celtic. It cut through my defenses like they were paper. Adrian's voice rumbled against her. I barely escaped. Spent 3 months healing in the catacombs beneath the house. And this? 1861. I tried to leave Thornfield. Managed almost a mile before the curse dragged me back. It felt like being unmade, every cell screaming as invisible chains tightened. His hand clenched around hers. I don't recommend attempting to break magical bindings. But you tried. Multiple times. I was. He paused, searching for words. Optimistic. Young. Convinced that willpower could overcome any obstacle. I learned otherwise. Alara twisted in his arms to face him. In the floating candlelight, his features were softened, less monster, more man. If I could break the binding, would you leave? Go somewhere new? I don't know. The honesty surprised them both. This house is my prison, but it's also the only home I remember. Leaving means forgetting. Isabeau truly forgetting, not just trying to move past. And as much as I hate her, he swallowed. She made me. Without her, I wouldn't exist. Without her, I wouldn't have been here to meet you. That's not gratitude talking. No, it's complicated grief. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I mourn what I could have been. The mortal life I lost. The family I never had. But I can't regret every choice that led me here, because here is where you are. The admission settled between them, heavy with implication. Show me the curse, Alara said. The actual binding. I want to see it. Adrian studied her face, looking for something. Then he nodded slowly. He rose from the bed, graceful despite the blood drying on his clothes, and moved to a far corner where roses grew thickest. He parted the curtain of petals, revealing a section of wall covered in symbols not carved but branded, black against gray stone. They formed a circle, intricate and perfect, with words in Latin winding through the geometric patterns. Vinctus aeternum, servus perpetuus, amor mortem vincit. Adrian's voice was flat. Bound eternal, slave perpetual, love conquers death. That last part sounds beautiful. It's a mockery. Isabeau's final joke. His finger traced the words without touching them. She bound me with love with the memory of what I felt for her. Said it would keep me faithful even in her absence. That I'd never be able to care for another, because the binding would prevent it. Alara's breath caught. But you do care. You said... I know what I said. He turned to face her, and his eyes were bright with something almost like wonder. Which means the binding is weakening, or you're stronger than her magic. Or I'm finally breaking free. Hope dangerous, fragile kindled in Alara's chest. Can we destroy it? The binding itself? Not without consequences. The curse is woven into Thornfield's foundations. Break it completely, and the house might collapse. All Isabeau's collected knowledge, all the artifacts she gathered lost. He moved closer, took Alara's hands. But there might be another way. A modification. What kind? If the binding was created through blood and consent mine and Isabeau's, then theoretically, it could be altered through blood and consent from someone else. Someone whose will is strong enough to override hers. Understanding dawned slowly. You want to bind yourself to me. Not bind. Choose. The distinction seemed important to him. Rewrite the curse so that I'm not Isabeau's creature anymore. So that I'm... He struggled with the words. Free to remain or leave. Free to love without it being a trap. Free. What would it cost? Blood. A vow. And an exchange. Exchange? Adrian's jaw tightened. To modify the curse, I'd need to feed from you. Properly. Not just a taste, but enough to form a connection. A blood bond. He released her hands, stepped back. It would tie us together. You'd feel what I feel. Know when I'm in danger. And I would be aware of you, always. Your heartbeat, your emotions, your presence. That doesn't sound like freedom. It isn't. Not completely, but it would be a choice we both made, rather than something inflicted. He looked away. I won't ask it of you. The risk alone. Yes. His head snapped back. Alara, I said yes. She closed the distance he'd created. You've spent 200 years trapped by someone else's desire. If this gives you even a fraction of autonomy back, then yes, I consent. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. Then explain it to me. No holding back. Tell me every danger, every cost, and let me decide anyway. Adrian's expression cycled through disbelief, hope, fear. Finally, he spoke words precise and clinical, a litany of warnings. The blood bond will connect us. You'll age normally, but I'll feel every moment of your mortality. When you die, and you will die, Alara, humans always do, it will break something in me, something I may not recover from. And if I lose control while feeding, I could drain you, kill you, turn you accidentally if your will proves strong enough to trigger the transformation. And Morrigan will sense the bond. She'll know you're no longer just a mortal I'm protecting, but something essential. She'll target you specifically. Use you as leverage. Alara considered each point carefully. Then, will it hurt? The feeding. At first. Then. His gaze dropped to her throat. Then it's supposed to be pleasant. The venom we carry, it's an evolutionary adaptation. Makes prey compliant. But you're not prey, so I don't know how it will affect you. Only one way to find out. Alara. Adrian. She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. I've spent 7 years mourning. 7 years in gray half-life, going through motions, existing but not living. You've given me purpose, danger, heat. I'm not walking away from that. From you. Even if it destroys us both? Especially then. She smiled, surprised by the fierceness of her own conviction. Because at least we'll burn together. At least it will mean something. Adrian's control cracked. He crushed her against him, kissing her with desperate intensity, all pretense of restraint abandoned. His hands tangled in her hair, tilted her head back, and he trailed cold lips down her jawline to the pulse point hammering in her throat. Tell me again, he demanded against her skin. Tell me you consent, that you understand, that you're certain. I consent. Alara's hands fisted in his shirt. I understand. I'm certain. The words matter. For the binding. Say, I offer my blood freely to break your chains. She took a breath. I offer my blood freely to break your chains. Magic shuddered through the sanctum, visible as ripples in the air, as candle flames bending toward them. The roses began to bloom faster, petals unfurling in time-lapse acceleration, filling the room with almost overwhelming sweetness. Adrian's fangs lengthened, his eyes blazed crimson. Every muscle in his body went rigid with the effort of maintaining control. Last chance, he gritted out. Walk away now, and I'll find another path. I swear it. Alara's answer was to tilt her head further, baring her throat completely. Make me yours, she whispered, and let me make you mine. Adrian's restraint shattered. He struck fangs, piercing her throat with surgical precision. And Alara's world exploded into sensation. Fire and ice. That was her first coherent thought. His bite was frozen, lightning, pain sharp and immediate, then dissolving into something else entirely. Something that felt like falling and flying simultaneously. Like being unmade and remade in the same heartbeat. Adrian's arms, locked around her, holding her upright as he fed. She could feel it, the pull of her blood leaving her body, the cold press of his mouth against her throat, the intimacy of being consumed. But beneath the physical sensations, something deeper stirred. A connection snapping into place like the final tumbler in an ancient lock. His emotions flooded through her. Hunger, guilt, desperate, overwhelming love. Loneliness so profound it had its own gravity. Fear of hurting her. Awe that she'd chosen this. Relief sharp as broken glass. I'm sorry. His thoughts whispered directly into her mind. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't stop. I need. It's okay. She didn't speak aloud, but somehow he heard her. Take what you need. I'm not afraid. The hunger intensified and then eased. The venom in his bite spread through her system, turning pain into a drugged warmth. Her knees buckled. Adrian caught her, lowering them both to the rose-carpeted floor without breaking contact. Through the bond, she felt him fighting for control. Felt the moment he forced himself to stop feeding, to seal the wound with a lap of his tongue, to pull back even though hunger still clawed at him. Enough, he rasped. That's enough. He cradled her against his chest, and Alara realized she was crying. Not from pain, from the sheer intensity of what she'd just experienced, from feeling centuries of isolation channeled directly into her nervous system. I didn't know, she managed. I didn't know you were so alone. I hid it well. Adrian's hand trembled as he stroked her hair. 200 years of practice. You don't have to hide anymore. I know. Wonder threaded through the words and through the bond itself, where his emotions still pulsed against hers like a second heartbeat. I can feel you, your life, your warmth. He stopped, overcome. Alara lifted her head to look at him. His eyes had returned to their normal wine-dark color, but they shone with unshed tears, possible only because he'd just fed. because human blood provided enough moisture for even vampires to weep. Did it work? She asked. The binding? In answer, Adrian rose fluidly and moved to the wall where the curse symbols burned. As they watched, the Latin words began to change letters, rearranging, meaning transforming. Vinctus aeternum became liberatus per amorem, freed through love. Servus perpetuus became socius voluntarius, willing partner. Amor mortem vincit remained unchanged. Love conquers death. Adrian's hand pressed against the symbols. For the first time in 243 years, he touched them without flinching. It worked. I can feel the difference. The curse is still there. I'm still bound to Thornfield's grounds, but it's not choking me anymore. It's just... He searched for words. Present, but not suffocating. Alara stood on shaking legs. The world tilted gently, lightheadedness from blood loss. But Adrian was there instantly to steady her. How much did you take? Not enough to endanger you, but enough that you need to rest. And eat. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, carrying her to the great bed. Sleep. I'll keep watch. I'm not tired. A lie. Exhaustion dragged at her limbs. Then let's call it meditation. He set her down gently, pulled the dark curtains around the bed for privacy. I'll be right here. I promise. Through the bond. She felt his determination, his fierce protectiveness. And underneath, so carefully controlled, she almost missed it, his lingering hunger. The blood had helped, but it hadn't satisfied. Not completely. You're still hungry, she said. I'll hunt after you sleep. The forest has deer. No. Alara caught his wrist. If the bond is supposed to sustain you, if I'm supposed to be your source, then take more. Do it properly. Alara, you're already weak. Then we'll be weak together. She pulled him down beside her. I'd rather that than have you hunting in the forest while Morrigan's pack still prowls. Besides. She felt her cheeks heat. It didn't hurt. After the first moment, it actually felt what? Intimate. The admission came quiet. Like we were sharing something more than blood. Like I was giving you life. Adrian's expression softened. You are. For the first time in 2 centuries, I feel warm. Not cold. Not empty. Warm. He settled beside her on the bed, and Alara curled against him, head on his chest where a heart should beat. Through the bond, she felt his wonder at the simple act of being held. Of holding. Tell me about before, she asked. Before Isabeau. Who were you? A long pause. Then. I was a fool. The youngest son of a minor lord, sent to Paris to study law. I had dreams, wanted to defend the innocent. Reform the corrupt system. Typical youthful idealism. His hand stroked her hair absently. I met Isabeau at a salon. She was everything I wasn't. Confident, powerful, ancient. Even then, though she looked 20. She said I had potential. That she could teach me to change the world. And you believed her. I was 25 and convinced I was immortal already, the way all young men are. A bitter laugh. She proved me wrong, then proved me right. Just not the way I'd imagined. Do you regret it, being turned? Every day for the 1st century. Then, he paused. Then I learned to find purpose in small things. Perfecting calligraphy. Mastering languages. Building this library book by book. And later, much later, listening to a woman mourn her sister and realizing that even monsters could be moved by grief. Alara tilted her head to look at him. I think you were never really a monster. I think Isabeau tried to make you one and failed. Perhaps, or perhaps you simply see me through forgiving eyes. Maybe both things can be true. He kissed her forehead, gentle and chaste. Sleep now. We'll face whatever comes next after you've rested. But Alara's mind was spinning too fast for sleep. Through the bond, she sensed Adrian's own restlessness. The sanctum offered safety, but it was also another prison, beautiful and well-appointed, but a prison nonetheless. What's Morrigan's endgame? She asked. Why does she want Thornfield so badly? Power. Isabeau left artifacts here, objects she collected over 3 centuries. Books of forbidden knowledge, relics from a dozen dead civilizations, and somewhere, Adrian's voice dropped. Somewhere in this house, she hid the source of her power, the thing that let her create vampires like me. Like Morrigan. The Master Stone. What does it do? According to her journals, it was forged by the first vampire, an ancient creature from before recorded history. Whoever controls the stone controls all vampires in the bloodline. Can compel obedience. can unmake transformations, can even grant mortality again. Alara sat up so quickly the room spun. Mortality? You mean you could be human again? Theoretically. If the journals are accurate. If the stone exists. If it hasn't been destroyed or lost. He gentled her back down. But even if it's real, finding it would mean tearing apart Thornfield stone by stone. And I'm not sure I want to. Humanity is... He struggled with the concept. It's what I lost. But after 2 centuries as this, I'm not sure I remember how to be anything else. You'd trade eternity for mortality? For aging and dying? For the chance to stand in sunlight again? To taste food? He touched her face reverently. To grow old alongside you instead of watching you wither while I remain unchanged? Yes, without hesitation. The confession cracked something open in Alara's chest. We'll find it, she said fiercely. The stone. We'll find it and you'll choose. Not Isabeau, not Morrigan, you. And if I choose mortality, if I become human again, then I'll be there. For however long we have. Could be 50 years, could be 5, if Morrigan kills me first. Then we'd better make them count. Adrian pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. Through the bond, she felt his emotions churning hope and fear braided so tightly they were indistinguishable. Outside the sanctum, dawn was breaking. Pale light crept across the tower floor, stopped cold at the threshold where shadow and safety began. They had one day, one brief respite before Morrigan's next assault, one chance to find the Master Stone and rewrite destiny on their own terms. Alara closed her eyes, exhaustion finally claiming her. But even in sleep, the blood bond hummed between them, a golden thread connecting mortal and monster, proof that love could transcend death, if they were brave enough to claim it. Alara woke to the scent of roses, and something metallic blood, she realized. Her own, from where Adrian had fed. The wound on her throat had closed, leaving only a faint ache and twin marks that would probably scar, proof of their bond, visible for anyone to see. She sat up carefully. The sanctum was unchanged. Floating candles, impossible roses, books stacked in careful towers. But Adrian was gone. Panic flared, instinctive and immediate. Then she felt it, the bond. A golden thread of awareness leading her consciousness toward him. He was close. Nearby. Searching through something. She followed the pull to find him crouched beside a section of floor where roses grew thickest. He'd cleared away the petals, revealing stones carved with the same symbols that marked the curse binding. His hands moved with surgical precision, tracing patterns, muttering in Latin. "You're supposed to be resting," he said without looking up. "So are you. I don't rest. Ever." He sat back on his heels, frustrated. "But I've been thinking, if Isabeau hid the stone, it would be somewhere significant, somewhere that meant something to her. The sanctum? Possibly, but this room is too obvious. She was paranoid 3 centuries of making enemies will do that. No, it would be," he trailed off, eyes widening. "The grave. Your grave? It's not really a grave. There's no body, I'm still using it, after all. A ghost of a smile. But Isabeau erected that sepulchre as a monument. To her creation. Her masterpiece." The word dripped bitterness. If she wanted to hide something where no one would think to look, it would be beneath a marker that everyone assumed was empty. Alara's pulse quickened. "Then we need to go there. To the cemetery. At night. Sunlight would kill me within minutes." Adrian checked the windows, where dawnlight pressed against spelled glass. "We have perhaps 12 hours. Morrigan will regroup during daylight. Vampires prefer darkness for warfare. But come dusk, she'll attack again, with greater force. Then we prepare." Alara stood, ignoring the lingering dizziness. "You said the stone could unmake vampires. Could we use it against Morrigan? If we can find it. If I can activate it. If the journals aren't elaborate fiction Isabeau created to torture me." Adrian rose fluidly. "But, yes. In theory, I could use the stone to sever Morrigan's connection to Isabeau's bloodline. Make her mortal again. Or simply, unmake her entirely." "You mean kill her? She's already dead. I'd be finishing the job." No remorse in his voice, just cold pragmatism. "Morrigan has killed dozens, maybe hundreds. She needs to be stopped. And what about you?" Alara moved closer. "If you use the stone, could you unmake yourself? Become human again?" His gaze softened. "We'll have that conversation, when we find it. For now." He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. For now, I need you strong, fed, ready to fight if necessary. Can you do that? Yes. Good. He released her reluctantly. There's food in the kitchen, preserved stores. Enough for weeks. Eat. Then we'll train. You need to know more than how to use a silver dagger if you're going to survive tonight. They spent the day in controlled chaos. Adrian taught her the weak points in vampire anatomy, not just silver and wood, but leverage points, vulnerable joints. How to move so that supernatural speed became a disadvantage in close quarters. How to use a vampire's hunger against them. We're predators, he explained, demonstrating a throw that sent her tumbling onto the training room floor. But predators have patterns. We track movement. We're drawn to fear. Show me neither, and you gain precious seconds. Alara learned. Fell. Rose. Learned again. By the time late afternoon arrived, her body was a catalogue of bruises, and her mind hummed with deadly knowledge. But she was faster, more confident, less prey, more threat. You're a quick study, Adrian observed, offering water. Most mortals freeze when confronted with something like me. You adapted. I've had practice. My sister. Alara paused, surprised to find talking about it didn't hurt quite as much. She was sick for 3 years before she died. Every day was a choice to keep fighting or give up. I learned not to freeze. She would be proud of you. She would think I'm insane for falling in love with a vampire. The words emerged before Alara could stop them, casual and world-changing all at once. Adrian went very still. Is that what this is? Love? I don't know what else to call it. She met his gaze directly. You're impossible, dangerous, technically dead, but you're also the first person in 7 years who's made me feel alive. So yes, I think it's love. Even though I can't give you normal, can't give you safety, especially because of that. She smiled. Normal is overrated, and I've done safe. It's lonely. Adrian closed the distance between them in 2 strides, framed her face in his cold hands, and kissed her with enough intensity to make her forget every bruise, every ache, everything but the desperate press of lips and the bond singing between them. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, him from habit, her from necessity. I love you, Adrian said simply. I've loved you for 7 years, without knowing it. And I will love you until I'm dust and memory. That's not a promise, it's an inevitability. Alara's eyes burned. Dramatic. I'm 268 years old. I'm allowed to be dramatic. They laughed together, broken and beautiful, and for a moment the looming darkness didn't matter. Then dusk fell. The sanctum's candles flickered. The roses closed their petals, as if bracing for storm. Through the bond, Alara felt Adrian's battle readiness snap into place, all softness hardening into the warrior he'd been forced to become. It's time, he said quietly. Are you ready? Alara thought of her sister, of 7 years spent leaving gifts at graves, of the teddy bear still sitting on the bed upstairs, button eyes reflecting nothing. Yes, she said. Let's end this. They descended through Thornfield's Gothic halls, silver dagger in Alara's hand, centuries of resolve in Adrian's bearing. The cemetery waited, and beneath it, if the journals spoke true, the Master Stone, the key to everything, freedom or destruction distilled into ancient rock. As they stepped out into twilight, wolves began to howl. Morrigan had returned, and this time there would be no retreat. The cemetery writhed with shadows. Morrigan's pack surrounded the iron gate, 24 wolves, all red-eyed and foam-muzzled, circling with coordinated precision. But they weren't attacking. Not yet. They were waiting. For her. Morrigan Blackthorn stood atop Adrian's sepulchre, silhouetted against the rising moon. She'd abandoned the spider silk dress for something practical. Black leather that gleamed like beetle carapace, fitted close enough to move without restriction. Her dark hair whipped in wind that touched nothing else. Adrian, she called, voice carrying effortlessly across the graveyard. You've kept me waiting. That's terribly rude. You've kept yourself waiting, Adrian replied, stepping through the gate. Alara followed half a step behind, dagger ready. I never invited you to begin with. No? But surely this little mortal did. Morrigan's gaze fixed on Alara. When she opened your sanctum, when she invited you in, she broke Isabeau's binding just enough to let others feel it weaken. Sloppy, darling. Very sloppy. Through the bond, Alara felt Adrian's guilt spike. He'd known. known the risk and taken it anyway because he'd wanted freedom more than safety. It changes nothing, Adrian said coldly. Thornfield remains mine. The artifacts remain mine. You have no claim here. Don't I? Morrigan crouched gracefully on the marble, fingers tracing the carved date. Isabeau made us both. Made us siblings, after a fashion. And when family leaves inheritance unclaimed, doesn't it pass to the nearest relation? You're not my family. Neither was she. Yet here we are, squabbling over her detritus like vultures. Morrigan's smile was all teeth. Here's what I propose. Give me the Master Stone. Walk away. Take your little blood bag with you, and I'll even let you both live. No. Adrian, be reasonable. I said no. Power crackled around him, visible as distortions in the air, as frost spreading across grass. You've killed innocents, built an empire on terror and hunger. I won't hand you a weapon that could make you unstoppable. Then you condemn your mortal to death. Morrigan's expression hardened. Last chance, brother. The stone, or I tear her apart and force you to watch. Adrian's response was to move vampire quick, closing the distance to the sepulchre in a blur. Morrigan leapt to meet him, and they collided in midair with a sound like thunder. The wolves surged forward as one. Ilara didn't hesitate. She'd trained for this, prepared. She met the first wolf with silver blade extended, slashing across its snout. The creature yelped and recoiled, smoke rising from the wound. Another lunged from her left. She dropped and rolled, came up slashing, caught it across the flank. Hot blood, human temperature despite the wolf form splashed her hand. The bond screamed. Pain exploded through her, not her own Adrian's. Morrigan had claws that dripped something black and oily, and she'd raked them across his chest, shredding silk and skin. The wound smoked, refusing to heal. Poison, Ilara realized. Some kind of vampire poison. Behind you! Adrian's mental shout. She spun. Jaws snapped inches from her throat. She thrust upward blindly, and the dagger found soft palate. The wolf's death throes nearly tore the weapon from her grip, but she held on, twisted, pulled. The creature collapsed, already shifting back to human form. A man this time, barely 30, his eyes still wide with dying surprise. Ilara's stomach churned. No time for guilt. No time for anything but survival. She ran for the sepulchre. If the stone was beneath it, they needed to reach it first. Adrian was holding Morrigan barely, but more wolves were coming, emerging from the forest in an endless stream. The marble was cold beneath her hands. She searched frantically for a seam, a trigger, anything that might reveal a hidden compartment. It requires blood, Adrian shouted, still grappling with Morrigan. My blood, specifically the lock, is keyed to Isabeau's line. Ilara looked up. Adrian and Morrigan were locked together, moving too fast to track, a whirlwind of fangs and claws and inhuman fury. She couldn't reach him, couldn't get the blood she needed, unless, the bond. She closed her eyes, reached along that golden thread connecting them, and pulled. The sensation was indescribable, like drinking starlight, like breathing in someone else's essence. Adrian's consciousness flooded into hers, and for a heartbeat they were one being, his ancient sorrow and her mortal determination, his cold hunger and her warm blood, mixed and inseparable. She opened her eyes and they blazed crimson. Power sang through her veins. Not vampire strength, but something adjacent, borrowed, the blood bond manifesting as ability. Ilara bit down hard on her own wrist. Her blood welled, dark and rich, carrying within it traces of Adrian's essence from their feeding. She pressed her bleeding wrist to the sepulchre. Aperta, she commanded, one of the Latin phrases Adrian had taught her. Open. The marble cracked, split. Ancient mechanisms groaned to life, gears turning for the first time in 2 centuries. The entire sepulchre began to sink into the earth, revealing a staircase descending into absolute darkness. And from that darkness, light pulsed red as heart's blood, cold as dying stars. The Master Stone. No! Morrigan's shriek was barely human. She threw Adrian aside with catastrophic force. He hit a gravestone and collapsed, stunned, and lunged for Ilara. Time slowed. Ilara saw death approaching in perfect clarity. Morrigan's outstretched claws, her fangs bared, hunger and hatred blazing in ancient eyes. Not like this. Ilara raised the silver dagger, let Morrigan's own momentum carry her forward, and drove the blade up with every ounce of strength she possessed. It punched through leather, through ribs, through the still chamber that had once held a beating heart. Morrigan screamed. The sound shattered windows in Thornfield, 300 yards distant. She staggered backward, clawing at the blade, at the silver burning through her chest. "You bitch," she rasped. "You mortal bitch." "I'm his mortal." Alara's voice was ice. "And you don't get to touch him again." She twisted the blade. Morrigan's eyes widened, dimmed. She reached out, not in attack, but something almost like supplication. As if, in that final moment, she regretted the centuries of hunger, the violence, the loneliness that drove her to covet what Adrian had found. Then she was ash. Gray particles on midnight wind, scattering across graves that bore names she'd probably forgotten. The wolves fled. Those that remained, perhaps a dozen, melted into the forest without their alpha's will to bind them. Within seconds, the cemetery was empty save for Alara and Adrian and the yawning darkness beneath the sepulchre. Adrian pulled himself upright, clutching his poisoned wounds. "You killed her! You actually—" "I know." Alara was shaking. The borrowed power drained away, leaving her hollow and cold. "I know. Are you all right?" "No, but I will be." She moved to him, helped him stand. "Can you walk?" "I'm 268 years old. I can manage a staircase." But he leaned on her anyway, and through the bond she felt his pain, his pride, his bone-deep relief that she was alive. Together, they descended into the sepulchre's hidden heart. The master stone waited on a pedestal of obsidian. It was smaller than Alara expected, barely the size of a fist, shaped like a rough-cut heart, but it pulsed with light that had nothing to do with reflection. This was internal luminescence, ancient and terrible and hypnotic. "So that's it," Adrian breathed. "The source. The beginning. What now?" "Now." He reached toward it. Stopped. "Now I choose." He turned to face her fully. In the stone's light, his features were rendered in sharp relief, beautiful and inhuman and desperately uncertain. "If I use this, I can become mortal again, feel sunlight, taste food, grow old and die like I was meant to. But I'll be powerless, human, vulnerable." His hand found hers. "Or I can remain as I am, immortal, strong, bound to you through the blood bond but fundamentally other. Forever watching you age while I stay frozen. Or," Alara said softly, "there's a third option, which is," she looked at the stone, at the power thrumming within it. "The journal said it could unmake vampires. Could it make them? Could it turn me?" Adrian recoiled. "Alara, no. Why not? Give me one good reason." She caught his face, forced him to look at her. "You've spent 2 centuries alone. I've spent 7 years mourning. We could have eternity together. Really together. Not borrowing time, but, actually, you'd lose everything. Your humanity, your warmth, your soul, some would argue. I'd gain you. Simple, certain, and maybe souls aren't where we think they are. Maybe they're in the choices we make, the people we love. Maybe I keep mine by choosing this consciously instead of running from it." Adrian's expression cracked. "It will hurt. The transformation. Like dying and being reborn simultaneously. You survived it. I had no choice. Isabeau didn't ask. She just took. Then I'm asking." Alara pressed his palm over her heart, where her pulse hammered wild and certain. "Adrian Corvus, would you make me yours? Not through blood bond or borrowed power, but actually, truly, eternally yours." He stared at her for a long suspended moment. Then he turned to the master stone. "There's a ritual," he said quietly. "Words," Isabeau recorded. "A vampire's blood mixed with human blood, channeled through the stone, with consent freely given. It binds the transformation, makes it cleaner, less painful than the usual method. Then let's do it." "You're certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Adrian lifted the master stone. It pulsed in his hands, responding to his bloodline, his will. He spoke words in a language older than Latin, and the stone's light intensified until Alara had to close her eyes against the brilliance. She felt him bite his own wrist, felt warmth, his borrowed warmth from feeding on her drip onto her lips. "Drink," he commanded, "and choose. Choose this. Choose me. Choose forever." Alara drank. The blood was sweet as wine and bitter as nightshade. It burned through her, rewriting cells, unmaking mortality. She felt her heart stutter once, twice, then stop entirely. And in that stillness, that perfect silence, She heard Adrian's voice through the bond. "Welcome home, my love." When she opened her eyes, the world had changed. Colors were sharper, sounds resonated with meaning. Every scent told a story, and the hunger was exquisite and terrible, and completely, utterly hers. Adrian caught her as she swayed. "Easy. The first hours are disorienting. Give yourself time to adjust." "How much time do I have?" "All of eternity." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips' gentle reverence in every touch. "We have all of eternity." They ascended together into the night. The cemetery stretched peaceful beneath stars, unmarred now by violence. Thornfield waited, no longer a prison but a sanctuary, and in her chest, where her heart had been, a new center of gravity pulsed. The blood bond magnified and transmuted into something that transcended human understanding. Love that had conquered death and would endure forever. 30 years later, Alara stood at the cemetery gate, watching the sunrise. She could appreciate it now, the colors, the warmth on the grass, the way light transformed the Gothic spires of Thornfield from menacing to magnificent. She simply couldn't experience it directly, not without the enchanted glass Adrian had commissioned, or the special salves that provided limited protection. Some limitations were insurmountable, but others could be negotiated, adapted, overcome. "You're up early." Adrian's arms wrapped around her from behind. His body finally warm. They'd fed last night, consensually, from travelers who'd stumbled on Thornfield seeking shelter. They always left guests with memories of fine wine and generous hospitality, never the truth of what they'd taken. "Thinking," Ilara murmured, "about the bear, how I used to leave it every night, desperate for someone to see me, to acknowledge my grief." She leaned into his embrace. "I haven't thought about my sister in weeks. Is that terrible?" "It's healing. She wouldn't want you frozen in mourning forever." "No, she'd want me doing exactly this." Alara gestured at the cemetery, now meticulously maintained. They'd added graves over the years, not for the dead they'd created, but for the travelers they'd helped. People who'd found peace in Thornfield's shadow and asked to be remembered here when their time came. A memorial to connection, to being seen. "The blood bank shipment arrives tomorrow," Adrian noted. "We'll have enough to last through winter without hunting at all." "Progress," Alara said with satisfaction. They'd spent decades building a network other vampires who chose ethics over appetite, who fed from the willing or the donated rather than the hunted. It was slow work, but it mattered. "I have something for you." Adrian released her, producing a small box from his coat pocket. "It's sentimental." Inside rested a silver locket, delicate, exquisite. When Alara opened it, she found 2 miniature portraits, herself at 23, human and hollow-eyed, and Adrian at 25, before Isabeau's transformation. "So we never forget," he said softly. "Who we were, what it cost, why we choose differently." Alara's eyes burned with tears. She could still cry, now that they fed regularly. "It's perfect. So are you." They stood together in the pre-dawn darkness, 2 monsters who'd chosen love over hunger, connection over isolation, eternity over ease. Behind them, Thornfield waited no longer a prison, but a home. Its library had been opened to scholars studying folklore and Gothic literature. Its grounds hosted monthly gatherings for their growing community of ethical vampires. Its secrets had been catalogued, contained, and occasionally deployed for good. The Master Stone rested in a vault beneath the sanctum, its power neutralized but preserved. Insurance, a reminder, a choice held in reserve should they ever need it. But for now they had this. Each other, the night, and all the nights to come. "Ready?" Adrian asked as the first rays touched the horizon. "Always." They retreated into Thornfield's shadows, where another day awaited. Another chance to transform curse into gift. Another opportunity to prove that love, messy, complicated, blood-soaked love could not only transcend death, it could sanctify it. And in the cemetery behind them, on a perfectly maintained grave that bore no body and no name, a single teddy bear sat in eternal vigil, button eyes reflecting the sunrise, a testament to the woman who'd left it, and the monster who'd learned to love because she had.